Alright y'all, today we are revisiting our Frost Mage build in Baldur's Gate 3, and instead of focusing on the Sorcerer as our main class, we're going to be moving towards the Wizard instead. Now the TLDR about a Frost Mage is that they do great damage, on top of having crazy crowd control potential. So if you like big numbers and you like your enemies slipping and sliding, well then this might be the build for you. Welcome back to the channel y'all. If you've been wondering where I've been and why I look like I'm going to Hawaii, well it's the same answer, we've been streaming. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video, but if this is your first time with the channel and you like more chill, I would say relaxed builds when it pertains to Baldur's Gate 3, then you're in the right place. Consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the build. Now when it comes to character creation, you can pick whatever race you want, but if you want to pick the best race, then you go with human. Class-wise, we're going with Wizard, which means we get 3 cantrips. We're going to be focusing on cold damage here, so Ray of Frost, kind of a no-brainer. Other than that, I would take 2 utility picks after that, so Mage Hand, Minor Illusion, these are both great. Having Bone Chill, this is really handy for enemies that like to heal, which happens quite a lot. Then Light, this is another great utility option as well, but kind of fill out what you need. I would say also Friends, this is a good one too. Just be careful around NPCs because they will get angry with you if they know they're having this cast on them. Spell wise, pretty simple. We're going to go with Ice Knife here, and we're also going to go with Chromatic Orb. Now Chromatic Orb has the possibility of creating a surface on impact, which is going to be really good for ice damage. Now other than that, I would go with Mage Armor for some defense, and then Shield as a reaction. Kind of have a whole kit for us already with just level 1 here. Other than that, I would go with maybe Enhanced Leap. If somebody doesn't have this, definitely pick it up on your Wizard. This is really helpful. And you can also pair Feather Fall with this as well to not get hurt while you are jumping. We learned that in the stream a little bit. Well, we already knew that, but yeah, this is actually a really good combination that you might want to consider. Background wise, go with what you want, but if you know this is going to be the face of the party, I would stick to Charlatan, Criminal, Noble, or Guild Artisan. And again, that's just for the face of the party. For your ability point spread, I would go something like this. Obviously, our spell modifier as a wizard is intelligence, so make sure that's at 16. And because we have Mage Armor, I would bump up our dexterity to 16 as well, and then Constitution 14, Wisdom at 12. Wisdom at 12 is really just to make sure that we have some sort of good defense against control spells, and this being at a negative Wisdom, it hurts a lot. So we want to make sure it's at least 10. I'm keeping it at 12. As far as your prepared spells, you can change these at any time, but this is Character Creator. Let's move on to the leveling process. Alright, you know what? We also forgot to name our character here. I kind of went with some blue hair there, so I think we'll just call her Bluey. Hopefully Disney doesn't come after us now. Now, continuing on with the leveling process. At level 2 here, we pick up our subclass. We're going to go with Evocation. Now, Evocation Wizard, we get to basically create pockets for our allies to be safe in for spells that are like AoE damage. And with our Ice Mage that we're building here, they're going to need that help because we have things like Ice Storm and Cone of Cold that we're going to pick up, and we don't want them being hit by that damage. Now, they are going to have to worry about the ice that we're creating around their feet, but you know, that's actually their problem, not ours. Anyways, spell-wise, really here, just pick whatever you want. If you want some guaranteed damage, then, you know, Magic Missile, this is always good. And then something like False Life, this can just give you like some temporary hit points that are really accessible. And then if somebody doesn't have Longstrider in your party, I highly recommend picking that up. And also Grease, I'm going to give a shout out to Grease because in Act 1 at the Githyanki Crush, there's a statue puzzle. Having Grease as a spell, really handy. You can also get grease from some bottles as well, but if you just want to make sure you have that covered, I'd pick that up. Prepared spells, you can change these out at any time that you want outside of combat, but that's level 2. Let's move on to level 3. Now at level 3, we pick up our level 2 spell slots, and there's nothing that is ice related from our level 2 spells, so we're going to make some picks like Shatter because of the thunder damage, and mostly for those orbs, those eyes that are patrolling around enemy areas like the Grimforge or the Goblin Camp. For the love of God, have somebody with thunder damage, and why not our Mage here, or our Wizard, I should say. Other than that, maybe another utility pick like Arcane Lock or Knock. But then again, having Misty Step, This is going to be really handy in case we somehow get ourselves trapped within some ice around us and we could slip. Having Misty Step to get out, that'll always be good, but at this level here, we're not going to be wanting to spend basically a level 2 spell slot on Misty Step because we need to be a little conservative with spell slots in the early game. But that's level 3 out of the way. Let's move on to level 4. Now, at level 4, we are going to pick up our first feats, but we also get to pick up a cantrip. I would go with one of the ones that we kind of talked about earlier, maybe Light or Friends. I'm going to stick with Light. Spell-wise, same choices we had before, just kind of pick something, I would say a utility pick, so Arcane Lock, that can be good, so can Knock. We're just going to go with those two. This choice, really not that important. Actually, instead of Knock, I'm going to go with Mirror Image. Mirror Image is great for the late game as far as survivability. Prepared spells, you know, pick what you need in every encounter. Now for our feats, I'm going to be honest, it's going to be pretty boring here. We're just going to go with Ability Improvement twice, and that is going to be able to get our Intelligence all the way up to 20. So first feat here at level 4, Ability Improvement. Probably at level 8 for our second feat, also Intelligence. After that though, you have some choices, I would say. You could go Dual Wielder, that way you can hold 2 staves and get the benefits of both of them. That's probably what we're going to go with. Other than that, yeah, maybe Elemental Adept or that resistance that we're choosing here for cold, but again, and then when we deal cold damage, we can't roll a 1. So that can be handy if you want to do like a little min-maxing, but I'm going to be honest, I think Dual Wielder is probably going to be our best bet. So that's the feats out of the way. Let's move on to level 5. Now at level 5, we pick up our level 3 spell slots, and there's a couple good ones here. Sleet Storm, this is good for creating an icy surface, although it is a concentration, so we got to keep that in mind. Other than that, Glyph of Warding, you can make this also ice damage, and then Haste and Counterspell. These are going to be 2 spells that we definitely want to pick up on our wizard here. But just here at level 5, I think having probably Glyph of Warding and then maybe taking Haste are going to be our best options here. And then at level 6, I think we'll take Sleet Storm and Counterspell. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that and move on to level 6 really quickly. And at level 6, we also pick up our subclass feature, Potent Cantrips. So our Potent Cantrips, a little bit harder to evade. This is going to be great because Ray of Frost, I love it as a cantrip, especially because it stops or it slows down enemy movement. So you get that raw damage and then the detrimental effect of slowing them down. Really good in my opinion. For spells, we just talked about it. We're going to take Counterspell here, and then we're going to take Sleet Storm, and then that'll move us along to level 7. And at level 7, we get our level 4 spell slots, and this is when we get Ice Storm. I'm going to be honest, this is probably going to be our bread and butter because we're an Evocation Wizard, so even if we have allies that are in the front line, we're not going to hit them with the damage of Ice Storm here, and this does a great area or radius and hits a lot of targets. Really powerful spell here, and then with some items, we're also going to be creating an ice surface as well. So a lot of things going on with Ice Storm. This is a really good spell. And then the next locked in choice I think you need to make is probably Conjure Minor Elemental here. I don't think it, I actually know it. You need to make this choice because with this we can summon 2 Ice Imps. And unlike other companions, these Imps are flying, meaning they're not going to get in your way as much, or it's not going to get so crowded in like a bottleneck situation. These Imps, they're going to be able to move freely, and they're going to be able to create ice surfaces on top of doing more ice damage. So it fits for the theme and the build we're going for. I think they're actually really good. So lock in these 2 spells and let's move on to level 8. And at level 8, we pick up some more level 4 spell slots. Greater Invisibility if you have a Stealth Archer. This is like a mandatory pick. And then Fire Shield. Fire Shield has the, you can also put a Cold Shield on yourself as well. So that also kind of fits in line with what we're going for. But if you don't want either one of these, Confusion, this is a good control spell, but it's a concentration. So always keep that in mind. Feat wise, we're going to bump up our intelligence again, and then we're going to move on to level 9. Now at level 9, we get our level 5 spell slots. Really, the only one that is absolutely mandatory is Cone of Cold, but if you want to stick to having more, I would say, companions or summons, then I would go with Conjure Elemental. Almost reminds me of the Mage in Warcraft 3. You can summon a Water Elemental, and I think that fits in line with what we're going for here. So these are my spell choices at level 9. Let's move on to level 10. Now these last 3 levels we can kind of zoom on by, but at level 10 here we do pick up Empowered Evocation. We get to add our intelligence modifier to all our evocation spells, which those have been the spell types we've been picking up throughout the leveling process here. You also pick up another cantrip. I would just go with whatever. I'm just picking friends. And then more spells. I would just make sure to lock in having hold monster and confusion. These are really handy for some Act 3 boss fights if you don't have anybody who's able to cast these or you don't have any scrolls. Lock those in. Now at level 11, we get our level 6 spell slots. And really, none of these are, I would say, super important. I think Cone of Cold and Ice Storm are going to be like our bread and butter, but Ice Wall, again, fits with what we're doing here. And then having Globe and Vulnerability, similar to having like Hold Monster, where there are plenty of scrolls of these spells in the game, but it's always nice to make sure that you have this available to you in case, for whatever reason, you don't have what you need. But Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, this is also kind of fits with what we're going for. We'll probably pick that up at level 12. So we'll lock in that at level 12, and then that last spell for you kind of can be whatever you want. Maybe Disintegrate. Actually, no, not Disintegrate, because we're not going to be wanting to use our level 6 spell slot for that spell. Instead, maybe go with... Oh, and I guess we haven't picked up Hold Person yet. At this point in the game, at level 12, you can almost guarantee that Hold Person will go off, and I guess if you want somebody dead and frozen, well then the Hold Person is going to be good, but really it's not exactly what our focus is going to be. For our last feat, we're going to go with Dual Wielder. And now I think we can move on to the equipment section, where we can talk about how we're going to alter our ice spells and make them even better. Now, moving on to the equipment section, I think there are only a few pieces that I think are absolutely required and locked in. And first is the Cold Brim Hat. You get this in Act 2 in Balthazar's lab. This is going to apply that encrusted frost effect. We're going to be doing this a lot because the next item that I think we need to pick up and is locked in is Winter's Clutches. You can get this from Glut in the Underdark, or you can just buy it from Lady Esther there in Act 1. But again, whenever we deal cold damage, we're going to be inflicting more Encrusted Frost. And Encrusted Frost, this is just going to affect the target. It's going to give them disadvantage to their saving throws, their dexterity saving throws. And then when they have 7 or more, they need to succeed a check, or they're going to take cold damage and then become frozen. That frozen effect we will talk about a little bit later. And then the last piece I think we need to lock in here is the Snowburst Ring. So whenever we deal cold damage, we're going to create ice around our target. Some of the ice spells that we use are already going to do this, but this just ensures that every other ice spell we do has that same effect. So those 3 pieces definitely lock in. And then the last one that I think is absolutely mandatory is the Morning Frost. You get this by assembling it in the Underdark, and I'll show the locations of where you pick this up. But putting this together just does a little bit more of frost damage. And then we have the possibility of chilling the target as well, which is going to help out with also freezing targets, having that frozen effect. So those are the locked in choices. What are some other good pieces of equipment kind of that I would recommend? Well, and before you get the Morning Frost, because this is a little bit into Act 1, I think Melf's First Staff here, this you pick up pretty early, also in the Underdark, but +1 to your spell save DC checks, and then +1 to your spell attack rolls. That's always just going to be handy for any sort of spellcaster. And then obviously for your last weapon that I would maybe recommend is the Marco Heshgeir. This is just probably one of the best staffs in the game for any sort of spellcaster, but this is an Act 3 weapon. So Act 1, you're picking up these 2 staffs, both really good. That's what I would go with. As far as your offhand is concerned, until you get dual wield, well, we have a human here, so we can use a shield. You don't have to use a shield, but right now for our human, that's what we can work with. This adamantium shield here, it's going to prevent us from being hit with critical hits. Really handy for survivability, plus the 2 armor class. I would go with that. Another really good shield is a Sentinel shield. This is going to add a +3 to our initiative. And then we also have Kethric's shield, which is going to help out with our spell save DC roll and our spell attack roll. I really love using Kethric's shield for a spellcaster. I think it's really good. As far as our range slot here, something like the Bow of Awareness for that +1 initiative, I think that's really good. Let's move on up to our headpieces here, because Fistbreaker Helm, this is also a really good choice, which is going to also help out with our spell save DC, and then also a little bit more initiative. Other than that, Act 3, Hood of the Weave, kind of a no-brainer here. Same goes for our chest slot. Right now we just have the Ice Bite robes, and that's mainly because of Armor of Agathis. This is going to give us some more temporary hit points, but then if anybody hits us, they're in melee, they're going to take cold damage. Not absolutely locked in, but this is a good chest piece here. Other than that, yep, Robe of the Weave, no, kind of a no-brainer as far as Act 3. Glove-wise, until you get Winter's Clutches, Bracers of Defense, you get this very early on. This is going to add +2 to our AC, making us a little bit more tankier. And then for whatever reason, if you don't have Winter's Clutches, I think something like the Daredevil Gloves, these are alright as well, mainly for that +1 to our spell attack rolls. Now, boot-wise, nothing is locked in, but I think Boots of Stormy Clamor, because we are inflicting conditions, and then that's going to add reverberations. I've said that word too much lately. This is just kind of universally good. Now, the Hoarfrost boots here, this is going to stop you from going prone on icy terrain. Maybe not as handy with our spellcaster here because we're going to be at range, and we also have Misty Step to just get us out of like any sort of melee encounter. But for your allies, say you have a paladin, fighter, whatever that's in close range, maybe give them these boots so they aren't slipping and sliding everywhere. Other than that, maybe the evasive shoes if you have somebody else who's wearing the Stormy Clamors, and this is just going to give us that +1 to our AC. As far as the cloaks are concerned, kind of universally, Cloak of Protection, this can go on anybody. And then the Cloak of Displacement, again, another universally good one, but for Act 3, Cloak of the Weave, just kind of the standard for, I would say, every spellcaster. Amulet-wise, or necklace, I should say, Elemental Augmentation. This is going to add our spell modifier to our cantrips, so if we're doing ice damage, this will be a little bit more damage that way. There is something like the Frost Prince amulet here. This is just going to give us a free cast of Ice Knife. I don't think it's all that great. Our other ring slot that we have here is the Ring of Mental Inhibition. This is going to give enemies mental fatigue, and a lot of our evocation spells do require the enemy to do a spell dice check, or I should say a saving throw. And so mental fatigue here is just kind of, again, it's just universally good. It just adds on to what we're already doing as far as just helping out with crowd control. Just a good ring overall. Something like the Calisco ring, this will also work, just a little bit more radiant damage, or it'll add a little bit of radiant damage. And then the Corsication ring, if you want to add radiant orbs, if nobody's using this combination, that's really good. And if somebody is, then something like the Ring of Protection here is something else you can just slot in. So those are kind of all the choices that I would go with as far as gear. It's pretty good gear progression here. If you don't have a human and you want an offhand, the Ice Snap here, this comes later in the game in Act 3 from one of the vendors in Rivington. This is just going to give us +1 to our AC. We're not necessarily going to be using the cold damage on it, but if a creature misses us, then they can possibly be chilled. Again, that fits into the ice, build that we're going for here. So this is all the equipment. I'm going to go ahead and put that the bow on. For the gameplay section, I am going to put on Marco Heshkire. We're not going to have a party with us, so we want to go in pretty juice, but this is all very early on gear. Act 2, Act 3, or Act 1, Act 2. The only Act 3 weapon here we're going to be using is Marco Heshkire. Everything else, this all works. It's all really good. I'm just going with this setup here. We'll go through it one more time just so you can see everything we're using. And then, yeah, we'll go ahead and get into a little bit of trouble. And I think some Flaming Fists, well, they had this one coming. I was thinking about making a joke like Flaming Fist or an Ice Mage, something like that. It didn't come together. Anyways, let's move on. Now for the gameplay section, before we go in guns blazing or guns frozen, I don't know, this whole fire and ice joke, it's not landing. To freeze a target, they must have that chilled effect on them first, and then you have to apply some sort of wet source to them. So for this instance, we're using a water barrel, but having a bunch of water jugs, that works too. We are getting that chilled effect from our staff here, from Morning Frost. Has a chance to have that chilled effect when we deal cold damage. If you hit a target that is wet with cold damage, they're going to be vulnerable to that cold damage, meaning it's going to do double damage, similar to lightning. That's probably what I would stick to in most situations, but if the, occasion arises where you see a target's chilled, you have a water source, well, you can just freeze them, just like this. Hit the water barrel, and now they're frozen. And it is another status effect. Now, that's how you freeze a target. Other than that, there are a bunch of other enemies that are kind of pissed off at me. So we're going to get some distance, and they're going to come out of the room, and we're going to completely lock down the area with all of our ice spells. Prep-wise, while they are going, really just like Mirror Image, Mage Armor. Mage Armor is probably the most popular one, or the one you're going to be using the most. Haste, that's another good one. And then the Fire Shield, also going to be good. Those are kind of your prep skills, but you don't need to do those for, I would say, even a majority of the fights. You need to use that, I would say, on a hard encounter or a fight that you know that's coming up that's going to be a little bit difficult. But you'll be just fine going in, basically blind, and just freezing everything. Ooh, you're going to try to use Conjure Elemental on us. Well, we are going to block it with a counter spell, level 4. This is why it's good to have counter spell. And hopefully they all just funnel in right here. Yeah, go ahead, heal them. Let's see what's going to happen. No, they didn't want to keep messing around with me. They stayed in that back room. But we are going to use just Cone of Cold. This is an amazing spell. And it's just going to... Oh, he's going to counter spell me. This is why I casted Haste, by the way. We're going to use Cone of Cold again. And just... Boom. Hit them all. Mage is down. This guy is encrusted with frost. And they also are suffering from that mental fatigue because of the ring we have. We can give a little ground and back up. Tactically retreat into a jail cell? No, let's not do that. Let's just go around this. Let's just back up a bit. We have pretty good survivability. We have Armor of Agathis on us, so if they want to come hit us in melee range, be my guest. If he would have connected, I'm pretty sure he's going to die. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty funny. And then he missed. Try to hit us again. Nope. Let's see what their cleric does. He's going to try to cure again. Go ahead. We have more than enough damage. Now, back to our turn again. The elementals. Let's go ahead and summon them. They are a lot of fun. And really, it's the imps that kind of spurred this build on for me. But then, the Myrmidons. Oh, we don't have our level 6 slot. I actually like the ice one a lot, or the water one. Really good. But the water elemental, also, not bad to have. Thankfully for the water elemental, let's go ahead and get to them. They're going to try to hit us. We have shield as a reaction as well. Great survivability. What are you going to do against my little water imps here? They're stacked together, but they're on top of each other there. But the water elemental can also elemental warp. So they can get around a bottleneck, which is like, I think, the biggest pain in the ass when it comes to having a bunch of minions. But we have the abilities here, like multi-attack. This is great. And then Winter's Breath. Look at this little cone ability. Go ahead and hit him with that. He's knocked prone. Fantastic. We go ahead and move him. And then instead of going with our Frost Mage there, let's have our int split. Yeah, you can see they're both kind of stacked on top of each other there. But Ice Breath with them. Great for when enemies are stacking up. Also creating that frost on the ground. Don't forget that. And then same thing. They have Orb, Chromatic Orb, but cold damage automatically. This is really great for being at further range. Death Burst here. This can be okay. I don't find myself using it too often, but I think Ice Breath and the Orb are both really good. Just little chunks of damage, and then they're also fodder for the enemy to target over us. But that's really about it for the fight. I mean, we are just absolutely dominating everything. You can see here, if we hit them, we get one more chance at that. Just how much damage our Ray of Frost is doing, which is a cantrip. Pretty crazy. We'll just hit him with our offhand. That's always funny. Just give him a smack with the stick. And then boom. That's the other aspect of the Frost Mages. Enemies that are on that frozen ground, they're going to slip. There goes their turn. This also works against bosses as well if they don't have some sort of difficult terrain feed on. But yeah, really, really easy here. I'm just going to try to get my imps actually to just slaughter them. Their claws also do a little bit of frost damage. We'll have you move over there. And then our other imp, it really wants my my mage to go. Hit him again. You move over. Now from range, from downtown, because also we're an evocation wizard, our imps completely safe. And there goes the cleric. Everybody is safe and sound, and we have our little water party here. Very cool. I love this build. I love the Frost Mage. During our playthrough that we're doing on stream, I'm always looking at the Frost Mage armor stuff, and I'm like, ooh, we could be making a pretty sick Ice Mage, and it would dominate, but we're holding back on that. Alright y'all, that is the build, that is the video. Let me know how you'd like to make your Frost or Ice Mage. I did mention at the beginning of the video that Sorcerer can work beautifully with this. Either the Draconic line or the Storm Sorcery works perfectly. I went with Evocation this time around because of the imps and the water elemental, and that's just really fun to put together. Now, we have been streaming a lot, so if you want to see more Baldur's Gate 3 content, but it is that stream vibe, so a little bit slower pace, come on by. Come say hi. We are having a lot of fun. We're doing our Ana mode, and we're not dead yet. Still a very high probability that we're going to fail, but it's all in good fun. We're also on Twitch. We're growing steadily if you prefer to watch on there instead. But anyways, yes, if you've made this far in the video, I appreciate the hell out of you, and I'll see you next time. Peace and take care.